He didn't have armor, he didn't have weapons. But when a wild puma came out of the shadows to attack two little girls, Bruno, a quiet, loyal farm dog, stood between them and death. What followed was a battle no one expected, and a sacrifice no one would ever forget, in the quiet valleys of southern Argentina. Far from the noise of the cities and closer to the sky than most would ever live, there was a dog named Bruno. He was a dogo argentino, strong in body and silent in spirit, pure white, with a thick muscular frame and eyes that watched the world as if it was something he'd sworn to protect. Bruno wasn't just a pet, he was family. He belonged to Mateo, a hard-working farmer who raised goats and fruit in the foothills with his wife, Lucia, and their lively 8-year-old daughter, Valentina. Every summer, Valentina's cousin Martina would come to visit from the nearby town, filling the farmhouse with even more laughter, mischief, and the smell of wildflowers braided into their hair. Bruno had been with the family since he was a pup. He never barked without reason, never wandered without purpose. He followed Valentina like a shadow, sitting patiently by her feet when she read by Thepachand, quietly pacing the yard each night, his nose lifted to the breeze like he was listening for danger. Bruno's not just a dog, Valentina once told Martina, eyes glowing with pride. He's our protector. He's like ... a knight. Martina had giggled at the thought, but when Bruno looked up at her with those solemn eyes, she wasn't so sure it was a joke. That summer, the sun came earlier and stayed later than ever before. The heat ripened the figs early, and Lucia, ever practical, handed the girls a small basket one morning with a smile. Go to the grove near the edge of the woods, and pick some before the birds do, and take Bruno with you. You know he loves to wander. The girls needed no more encouragement. Hand in hand, they skipped down the dusty path that wound through the hills like a ribbon, the basket swinging between them. Bruno trotted beside them, head high, his powerful legs moving with quiet grace. The trees stood tall at the foot of the mountainy small grove with thick branches and leaves that danced in the breeze. The girls laughed as they climbed up onto low limbs, their fingers sticky with sweet fruit. They sang songs, told stories, and talked about everything they could imagine: horses, birthdays, clouds, and dreams. Bruno, as always, stayed nearby. He paced the grove slowly, sniffing the air, glancing toward the forest that stood just beyond the last tree. Something stirred in his chest, an uneasiness, faint but sharp. He didn't growl, not yet, but his body tensed. The wind shifted. Somewhere, in the shadowed woods, another set of eyes had locked onto the girls, hungry, silent, waiting, but for now, all was peaceful. The girls filled their basket, their voices echoing in the sunlit air. Bruno stood at the edge of the grove, his muscles tight, his ears turning with each sound. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew this: whatever it was, it would go through him first. Because Bruno wasn't just a dog, he was a guardian, and danger had just crossed his path. The trail to the fig grove curled gently uphill, cutting between long swaying grasses and the rocky ridges that marked the foot of the forest. For Valentina and Martina, it was nothing short of an adventure, like stepping into the pages of a storybook. They took turns carrying the fig basket, their feet kicking up dust as they chased butterflies, told secrets, and occasionally glanced behind them to make sure Bruno was still there. He always was, his big white body gliding like a silent cloud, eyes sharp, ears twitching with every snap of a twig. "Race you to the trees," Martina yelled, already dashing ahead. Valentina laughed and followed, her hair flying like ribbons. In the wind, the grove wasn't far, now just past a bend in the trail where the forest began to thicken. The fig trees stood tall and proud, their broad leaves fluttering like green salsand, their branches heavy with purple fruit. The girls squealed with delight as they ran to the nearest tree, dropping the basket and scrambling up the low limbs like two excited monkeys. Bruno stopped. He didn't follow. Instead, he stood still at the very edge of the grove, his head tilted slightly, his nose high in the air. Something had changed. The breeze, once playful, now carried a scent that didn't belong. A smell wild and old, filled with instinct and warning. His ears were pinned back, his muscles tensed. From deep in the trees beyond the grove, a shape moved low to the ground, silent as a ghost. It weaved between shadows with the grace of something born to hunt, a puma. It had been tracking them for longer than Bruno realized. Drawn by the sound of laughter, the quick movement of small bodies, and the scent of warm skin and fruit things that whispered easy prey in the language of predators. The girls were still laughing, stretching for the ripest figs, completely unaware. Bruno's eyes locked on the shadow. He took a slow step forward, then another. He didn't bark. He didn't growl, he watched, and the puma watched back. They both knew what this was. Then, suddenly, Martina spotted him. Bruno, standing stiffly, gaze fixed on the trees. She climbed down a branch and called out, "Valen, something's wrong." Valentina turned, confused. What's he looking at? Then they saw it, two golden eyes, glowing from the darkness just beyond the tree line. The puma stepped forward. It didn't roar, it didn't rush, it moved with cold purpose. Its long body rippling with power, its focus unblinking. The girls froze. Time seemed to stop. "Bruno," Valentina whispered. He didn't turn to her. He took one more step forward, blocking the girls with his broad chest. The growl that rumbled from his throat was low and deep, the sound of thunder far off, the promise of a storm. The puma crouched, muscles coiling. Bruno lowered his head. Then, like lightning, the puma lunged, and Bruno met it in midair. The puma struck like a shadow falling from the sky, silent, swift, and deadly. Its massive paws reached for Bruno's throat, claws extended like razors. But Bruno didn't flinch. He rose to meet the predator with the full force of his weight and will. Their bodies collided mid-air. The girls screamed. Valentina grabbed Martina's hand, dragging her back as the two animals tumbled violently across the ground. The fig baskets spilled, fruit rolling into the dirt, forgotten. Dust clouded the air. All they could see were flashes of white fur and golden limbs as the battle began. The puma slashed viciously at Bruno's shoulder, leaving deep gashes that instantly stained red. Bruno yelped, but he didn't retreat. He lunged forward, his massive jaws locking onto the cat's neck with terrifying strength. The puma thrashed beneath him, claws tearing at his side, trying to throw him off. But Bruno held firm. Every growl, every bite, every second of pain, he bore it all for them. The puma rolled over, using its powerful back legs to kick at Bruno's belly. Bruno grunted and staggered back, his side heaving, blood soaking his coat. But the moment the puma stood to pounce, again, Bruno charged head, low teeth, bared, throwing himself forward with all the strength he had left. The girls watched, helpless and sobbing. They didn't know what to do. They couldn't run, they couldn't leave Bruno, and they couldn't help not against a wild mountain lion. Martina fell to her knees, her hands over her mouth. "He's going to die," she whispered. "No," Valentina said through tears, gripping her cousin's hand tightly. "He won't. He can't. He's Bruno." And then, they heard it. A sharp, pained yowl. The puma's. Bruno had latched onto the side of its neck again. His jaws clenched, his eyes wild with desperation. He dragged the cat backward, slamming it into the base of a tree. The puma clawed at his ribs, raked, hissed, and twisted to break free. But Bruno didn't let go. He couldn't. Not while his girls were still in danger. Blood pooled in the dirt. The air was filled with snarls, whimpers, and the sickening sound of struggle. The mountain grove, once filled with laughter, had become a battlefield. Then suddenly, the puma shuddered. Its body jerked once, twice, then stilled. It collapsed to the ground, motionless. Bruno staggered back, his entire body trembling, his chest heaving with every broken breath. His white coat was slashed and torn, dyed with blood. One of his eyes was swollen shut, and deep wounds marked his legs and side. But he was standing, barely. The puma lay behind him, lifeless. The girls didn't move. They didn't speak. They just stared at the battered, bleeding dog who had given everything he had to protect them. Bruno turned his head toward them. His legs wobbled. He took one step forward, then another. Then he collapsed. Bruno! Valentina screamed. They ran to him, dropping beside his broken body. His chest still moved, just barely. His ears twitched at the sound of her voice. He was alive, and he had done what no one else could. He had won. Bruno! Valentina whispered, cradling the dog's bloodied head in her lap. Please don't leave me. Martina knelt beside her, wiping dirt and blood from his ears with trembling hands. Bruno's breathing was ragged, wet and shallow. His white coat, once so clean and proud, was torn and stained with red. His eyes fluttered, but didn't open. His tail lay still. He's alive, Martina whispered, her voice cracking. We need help, now. Valentina wiped her tears with the back of her hand and stood up, heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. Come on, she said. We have to run. They didn't take the fig basket. They didn't look back at the lifeless Puma. Hand in hand, the girls ran down the mountain trail, tripping over stones, scraping their knees, and crying but never stopping. They screamed as they neared the farmhouse, voices hoarse with panic. Papa! Valentina cried out. Help, it's Bruno. There was a lion. Matteo, who had been fixing the roof, dropped his hammer the instant he heard the fear in her voice. He leaped from the ladder and ran to meet them, catching both girls in his arms. What happened? Where's Bruno? He asked, heart racing. He saved us, Martina sobbed. A big puma came out of the forest, and he fought it. He fought it for us. Matteo's blood turned cold. A puma, here, without a word, he grabbed his machete and bolted up the path, 2 farmhands behind him. The mountain that usually took 20 minutes to climb, he cleared in 10. Sweat poured from his face, not from the heat, but from terror. Terror that he'd arrived too late. When he reached the grove, what he saw brought him to his knees. The ground was stained with blood. The air reeked of death. The puma lay still, at the base of a fig tree, its eyes dull, its body broken, and a few feet away, Bruno, his dog, his companion, his protector. Matteo dropped the machete and ran to him. He knelt down and gently touched Bruno's side. The dog didn't lift his head, but his chest rose, barely. You stubborn, beautiful boy, Matteo whispered. You held on. With help from the others, Matteo wrapped Bruno in a thick wool blanket, carefully cradling his massive body. His arms strained under the weight, but he didn't stop not once until they reached home. Lucia gasped when she saw them. She ran to prepare water, clean towels, anything they could use. Valentina stood frozen at the doorway, watching as they laid Bruno on a bed of straw and blankets in the kitchen. She crept to his side and held his paw. I'm right here, she whispered, her voice shaking. You're not alone. We won't let you go. The local veterinarian arrived before nightfall, sweat on his brow, his hand steady but his voice trembling. He cleaned each wound, stitched torn skin, and gave Bruno pain medicine to help him rest. This dog, the vet murmured, examining the wounds, he should have died. I don't know how he's alive. This is something else. This is Will. Matteo said nothing. He only sat beside his dog, brushing the blood-matted fur from Bruno's forehead. That night, the house was quiet, no laughter, no music, only the sound of Bruno breathing, each breath a little victory. And though he didn't speak, though he couldn't rise, everyone knew Bruno had already done the impossible. By morning, the story had spread. Word traveled fast in the hills of southern Argentina. And when the villagers heard what had happened, that Bruno Matteo's quiet, loyal dog had fought and killed a wild puma to save Valentina and Martina, no one stayed home. They came on foot, by mule, and even on motorcycles, winding down dirt roads with solemn faces and heavy hearts. Children held their parents' hands. Old men leaned on canes. Mothers brought warm bread, soup, and folded towels. One woman brought her own dog, who sat quietly outside the farmhouse, sensing something sacred inside. They didn't come out of curiosity. They came out of respect. Inside, Bruno lay on a makeshift bed in the kitchen, still too weak to stand. His eyes remained closed, his breathing shallow. A clean sheet covered most of his body, but the scars were still visibly along his ribs, across his shoulder, and along one ear that had been torn nearly in half. Valentina had not left his side. She sat curled beside him, resting her head gently on his chest to feel the rise and fall of each breath. Her hands were wrapped in gauze from where she had tried to wipe away the blood with her own sleeves the night before. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but she didn't cry now. Now she waited. Matteo stepped out onto the porch to greet the crowd, his voice low but proud. "It's true," he said. "The puma was as big as a calf, and Bruno, he didn't hesitate, he didn't run, he fought, for my daughter, for Martina, he nearly died for them." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several people placed hands over their hearts. One older man, Don Philippe, removed his worn-out hat and held it to his chest. "No other dog would have done what he did," he said hoarsely. No animal, no man, even one by one, people came inside, quietly, respectfully. They didn't speak much. Some knelt beside Bruno to whisper a prayer. Others gently touched his paw. Children left small offerings, drawings, flowers, and pieces of candy wrapped in crinkled foil. Lucia wiped her eyes as she watched. "He doesn't even know," she whispered to Matteo. "He has no idea how many hearts he's touched." Matteo nodded. "He'll know. When he wakes up, he'll see." And then, as if he heard them, Bruno stirred. A low whine escaped his throat. His paw twitched. Valentina shot upright. Bruno, his eyes fluttered open just a little. One was still swollen shut, but the other found her face. His tail gave a tiny, trembling wag. The room held its breath. Valentina leaned in, tears instantly welling in her eyes. "Hi boy, you came back." Bruno didn't bark. He didn't try to move, but in his eyes there was something strong and sure. He knew she was safe. He knew it had all been worth it. The village began to clap, not loud, not wild, just soft, respectful applause. It rolled through the room like a blessing. Bruno, the dog no one noticed before, had become something more. Not just a pet. Not even just a hero, but a legend. Weeks passed. The fig trees began to lose their leaves. The breeze grew colder, carrying the scent of approaching autumn. But inside the farmhouse, hope bloomed like spring. Bruno was healing. Slowly, painfully, but he was healing. His wounds had closed, though deep scars remained like medals carved into his flesh. His eye would never fully open again, and one of his ears now folded in half where the puma's claw had torn through it. But Bruno, brave, beautiful Bruno, was alive. Each day, Valentina helped him up. Each day, he stood a little longer. Lucy made him special meals, warm broth, soft rice, and bits of lamb. And each night, Martina brought her blanket and curled beside him, whispering stories to help him sleep. He couldn't run, he couldn't chase birds or patrol the yard, but he could look at his girls with quiet joy, his tail thumping slowly when they entered the room. Then came the day everyone had been waiting for. It was early morning when Valentina entered the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She glanced over at the corner where Bruno usually lay and gasped. He wasn't there. "Bruno," she spun around and saw him standing in the doorway. He was shaky, leaning heavily on one side, but he was up, on all four legs. His head hung low, his tongue drooped from his mouth, but his tail wagged. "Papa," she screamed. "He's standing. He's standing." The whole family rushed in. Matteo froze when he saw him. "My God," he whispered. "He did it." Lucia pressed her hand to her mouth, tears spilling freely. Bruno took a step, then another, out the door, into the sunlight. By midday, half the village had gathered outside the house. Word had spread. Again they had seen him nearly drowned. Now they came to witness what some called a miracle. A trail had been decorated with flowers and fig branches, leading to the field behind the house. And at the end of that path stood a wooden sign, freshly carved by Matteo himself. Bruno the brave dog. He protected what he loved. The people clapped. Some wept, some just smiled in silence. Bruno walked down that path slowly, side by side with Valentina and Martina, who held little ribbons in their hands. His walk was stiff. His body bore the story of what he had faced, but his head was high. His heart was full. Children ran ahead, tossing petals on the ground. An elderly neighbor reached down to kiss his forehead. A local artist sketched his likeness in a leather-bound book. Bruno didn't understand the ceremony. He didn't care for attention, but he knew this much. His family was safe. His girls were happy. The world, for now, was quiet. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in golden reds and soft purples, Bruno lay down in the tall grass. Valentina curled beside him, whispering into his ear, "You did it, Bruno. You saved us, and I'll tell your story forever." And she did. Bruno's tale was told in homes, in schools, in news articles, and across faraway lands. His picture was drawn by children. His name was remembered. Because he wasn't just a dog, he was the dog who loved enough to fight a mountain lion and lived to walk again. And in every fig grove, on every trail whence lurked, his paw prints remain, not in the dust, but in hearts. Years passed, the fig trees in the grove still blossomed every summer, their branches heavy with sweet fruit. Children still played beneath their leaves, their laughter echoing through the valley. But no one, no matter how young or carefree, ever went there alone. Because beneath the tallest fig tree near the edge of the trail, a small wooden sign remained, weathered bitterment, never forgotten. Carved into it, faded but eternal, were the words, "Here rests Bruno, protector, friend, and the bravest soul we've ever known." Bruno had lived for 5 more years after the day he stood again. His fur grew grayer, his steps slower, but his eyes never lost their fire. He watched over Valentina and Martina as they grew taller, stronger, and more full of dreams. He followed them to school gates, waited for them outside the orchard, and even stood guard at the edge of birthday parties. He never chased cats, never barked at passing birds. He simply sat where he was needed most, quiet, watchful, loyal. When he finally passed peacefully with Valentina by his side, the whole village mourned. Even the sky seemed to weep that day. Clouds rolled in from the mountains, and soft rain kissed the earth. Flowers appeared at the base of the fig tree overnight. Children placed drawings of him beside his gravestone with capes, some with crowns. But Bruno didn't need a crown. He had already become a king in the hearts of everyone who knew his story. And that story didn't fade. No, it grew. People came from far away to visit the grove. Teachers brought their students. Travelers stopped to leave stones of respect. Reporters wrote articles about the dog who fought a mountain lion to save 2 girls. One artist even sculpted a statue of him, fierce and proud, standing tall between 2 smiling children. But the ones who remembered him best were the girls whose lives he had saved. Valentina often returned to the grove as a young woman, sitting beneath the tree with a book or a cup of tea, sometimes just to feel close to him. Martina, now a teacher, told his story to every new class she taught. She ended each retelling with the same words, "Bruno wasn't just a dog. He was proof that love is braver than fear and stronger than claws." And every child who heard it believed it, because how could they not? Bruno's courage wasn't just legend. It was truth, carved in memory, sealed in scars, and whispered through generations. So when the wind rustles, the fig leaves and the birds sing their afternoon songs, people sometimes pause and listen. And if they listen closely enough, they'll hear it. The quiet thump of a tale. A soft breath. The heartbeat of a hero who never asked to be one. Bruno, forever remembered. Forever loved.